Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, welcome everyone to Impact Dashboard Live. Today we're going to be taking a look at our online economic development impact model called Impact Dashboard. My name is Paul Shurin. I'm an economist with Impact Data Source, and I'll be demoing the app this afternoon. Today's a special day for us because we're going to be taking a look at our soon-to-be released redesign. So this is a bit of a sneak peek for everyone joining today. The version of the app that we'll be looking at will be released to our users later this month. But let me back up a minute before we get too far and just explain what Impact Dashboard is. So Impact Dashboard is a web app that allows economic developers to collect, organize, and analyze data on businesses. And so the app can generate impact reports so that economic developers can comprehensively evaluate economic development incentives and address the concerns of stakeholders. All right, so that's a lot of words. I do better with pictures, so let's just see if we can kind of describe what this is with pictures. So here are some screenshots from the app, and I'll kind of just walk through what you're looking at a little bit. So at the top on the left-hand side, Impact Dashboard is going to allow you to estimate the economic impact of projects. So you can see there you have the total number of jobs, which is going to include the indirect jobs, the spin-off jobs, including indirect and induced. And then at the bottom on the left-hand side, you see some benefits, costs, and net benefits, and that's representing essentially the fiscal impact for the individual government entity there. So on the right-hand side, you can see we go into the weeds quite a bit to derive those net benefits. You can see the taxes, things like sales taxes or property taxes, and all the different sources of revenues that we're picking up that are a part of the analysis that we're putting together. But I also mentioned incentives, and so this next screen is showing us what our different capabilities are around looking at economic development incentives. So typical things like property tax abatements or rebates and so forth, we can evaluate those. We can also look at sales tax rebates, and really one of the more popular features obviously is this non-tax incentive. So being able to look at maybe a job creation grant of maybe a certain amount, being able to say if the city is going to put in X amount per job, what's the city's rate of return on that? And what's the payback period? How long will it take for the city to get their money back? Thinking of this as an investment, and the return on that investment is represented by the net benefits that are generated for the district. So that's just a little sneak peek of what we're looking at. We're going to jump into the model in just a moment, but I want to kind of address a couple things, just hopefully clarify a little bit of the confusion that may be there. So Impact Data Source, that's the company. That's the company that Jerry Walker started in 1993. We're specialized in consulting services for economic and fiscal impact analysis. So we support economic development organizations or other governments to help them understand economic development impacts. And so most of our consulting clients are considering economic development agreement or other incentives and that sort of thing. So we have a wide range of consulting services. That's what Impact Data Source, the company, does. Now we also have a product. That's Impact Dashboard. As I mentioned, Impact Dashboard is a web-based app. We have over 100 clients using the model. They represent kind of located across 15 different states. We cover over 150 counties there, and the clients represent kind of a wide spectrum of economic development organizations, cities, and counties. So we have some cities under 10,000 population, so some really small communities. We also have some model clients that represent large metros, multi-county regions, even organizations that make the model available to their members. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover here on the front end. Let me actually now jump into the model to show you what Impact Dashboard looks like as you interact with it, and some of the screens here. So when you log in to Impact Dashboard, you'll be presented with a list of your active projects. So as you can see, we've got some distinction across the top for different categories. We have, in economic developers terms, we've got won and lost, We can also have an archive and all. So we've got the active is kind of the main screen that we're leading to. If we look at all of our projects, we can see kind of all of the different projects that we might have worked on, and wherever we've categorized them, we can see that list here. The list of active projects, so it's just kind of a matter of keeping things organized if we want to categorize things. So on a given tile, we can see here let me see what's going on. I love live demos here on an app that's not actually in production yet. So as we look at these tiles, we can see the information that's contained on them. So each project has a name. It has it indicates how many scenarios we may have run in there for a particular project, and you can also see some tags that we've applied to it. There's a couple actions that you can take on a given project. You'd be able to edit the name. So as we pull up the rest of this here in just a moment. Not quite sure what's going on, but hopefully it will load at some point. Well, okay. All right, so we've got these tiles that represent projects. We can see we can rename the projects if we need to. We can also move projects from category to category. So if we wanted to, say, move Project Armadillo to one of the other categories, we'd be able to choose one, lost, or archive. And then if you no longer need a project at all, you can hit delete here as well. If we look here in these different categories, we can see here are 3 projects that we've categorized as 1, and we've got 4 different projects that we've categorized as lost. So this is just giving us some more ability to organize and categorize our projects. I'm going to be taking a look at Project Armadillo today, so I'm going to click into that scenario, or that project, excuse me, and we're going to be in what we're calling our Project Control Center. So this is for Project Armadillo. We can see all of the information relating to Project Armadillo. On the left-hand side, we can see we've got a list of our scenarios. So I've run 3 different scenarios for this, and actually what you can see is on the right-hand side, I'm seeing some information associated with original data, my scenario called original data. If I wanted to, I could click and preview one of these other scenarios and let that update over here. Let's take a look at the exemption one, and you can see things update because you're taking a sneak peek from here to look at your actual scenario. On the left-hand side at the bottom, this is where we're able to apply those tags and associate documents with this project. So for example, if I wanted to apply a tag here, I might want to indicate that it was located in a TIF district, so I could just add an existing tag for my TIF district, or you can type in, a brand new, if it was in, the rail yard or something like that, you could start typing in a tag and apply that. I won't do that because I don't want to create a new tag in this case anyway. And actually, I don't want the TIF one on there either, so I'll get rid of it. You can upload documents just as you see here. I've uploaded, draft agreements and then the final agreement, as well as like Excel files for, more detail on the salary and positions. So this is just to kind of keep all of your information for the project organized. Now, if you want to evaluate a project or evaluate a scenario, you can do that just by clicking on the scenario name. So I'm going to take a look at our $1,500 per job scenario. So this is just a name that I created, of $1,500 per job. What this is essentially I started with the original data, and then I started kind of evaluating different incentives. But here we're inside a scenario, and this is where you're able to enter in the project-specific information. You're able to model different types of incentives, and then view your reports. So I'm going to just jump straight to the reports here so we kind of get a sense of what's going on. On the report page, we have a couple different options. Essentially, we have a summary report, which is a 1-page infographic style report that you can see here that summarizes the impact from the perspective of one of these tax districts. So for economic developers, a lot of times you want to get down to, what's the impact for the city, or separate that from what's the impact to the county. And so Impact Dashboard allows you to do that. You can see here our net benefits are summarized at the top. There's more detail here down in the left-hand side, the table that we were looking at earlier. The economic impacts are summarized onto the right-hand side at the top, where we can see information on the spin-off jobs and so forth. And then we have kind of pulling everything together, we have a section that's showing us our incentive analysis on the right-hand side. And so we can see in this case, our $1,500 per job is generating a 33% rate of return and a 2.5-year payback period in that case. This is the graph at the bottom is just showing us that while we're focused on the city here of $254,000 in net benefits, the county, the school districts, and other taxing entities are benefiting from the project as well. So you can look at, as I'm seeing here, a scenario, or excuse me, a report for the city only. If I wanted to look at a report or generate a report for the county, I could do that as well. You're able to print these off, either print them or actually just generate a PDF if you wanted to do that. You can save essentially that as a PDF. So these are all our summary reports, one for each one of our taxing entities. If we click on the detailed report, this is where we're going to be able to see kind of a full narrative on the analysis. So if we continue to scroll down here, we can see we address the economic impact in several tables and several paragraphs. And then we show the fiscal impact across all of the tax districts. As we mentioned on the summary report, you can do one at a time essentially, because we have the space of one page. But here we're going to summarize all of the different tax districts. And so in this type of report, the detailed report, if you were to print this out, it may print out to maybe 15 to 20 pages depending on the specifics. But you can see that we go into detail on each one of the entities here, and we can have all the information we need if we print out this detailed report. Now, this is just showing you again some of the outputs. Just to kind of back up, let me show you some of the other features here. So I'm going to start from the original data. So this scenario that we had was the original data. I'm going to copy that one. So what you can do with these scenarios, you can copy or create as many scenarios as you want. So I'm going to copy this one. And the purpose for me copying this is because maybe if we think through like a workflow from that standpoint, we might have received new information with the latest jobs numbers. So I'm going to give this scenario a different name. Right now it just says copy of original data, but it's actually going to be latest jobs data, all right? And I'm going to leave the description. This is a description that I've already written in here. I'm just going to leave it as is, even though it still references 50 new workers. But I'm going to hit next here, and it's going to let me identify where the project is located. And so here I'm identifying specifically which taxing districts or which area of town is this project located in on this left-hand side. So I can, select from a drop-down some options that we might want to select. On the right-hand side, we can actually put a real address in here, so we can just type in where the project is going to be located, so we can get a map that kind of shows off where this project is going to be and help communicate, more information about the project. And then the final kind of modal here. So as we're stepping into a brand new scenario or a brand new iteration here, we're going through these screens at the top, the description, the location, and now the scenario industry. And so this is where I can identify where the project, or excuse me, what industry this project represents. In my case, it's still going to be the hardwood, veneer, and plywood manufacturer, because that hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed that I need to make an adjustment for is the jobs. But if I wanted to, I could change, you can enter any type of industry in here. So if it was maybe a warehousing project, you can start typing warehousing, and then you could select general warehousing and storage perhaps, and you get different multipliers. So essentially this is where our economic impact model is coming in. We're using the RIMS-2 multipliers from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and I'm going to put this back to our hardwood, plywood manufacturing. So we get those multipliers. You do have the option to overwrite multipliers if you need to. Those can be done just by clicking that button and typing in new numbers. I'm going to hit close here. And so if we need to get back to any of those inputs that we just looked at, you can do so just by clicking up here if we wanted to edit the description or the location or the industry. Now, what I said was this is for our latest jobs data. I'm going to put in maybe the updated information. So instead of 50 jobs, they told us it was going to be 100 jobs. So I'm going to just update these numbers, and what you'll see is in real time, these results on the right-hand side will be updating to reflect what we're changing here. So as I'm going through here, you can see I'm getting up to our 100 jobs eventually. And so now on the left-hand side, we see or on the right-hand side, but at the leftmost box here, jobs, we've got 100 direct jobs and we've got 38 spin-off jobs, so for a total of 138 jobs. Our direct workers are still making $40,000. Spin-off workers make a little bit less, so on average, across all of the new jobs, they're making about $35,000. Now, the other inputs that I have throughout here, if I click forward here, I can see we have a question about workers relocating to the area. So this is that idea that you might be creating 100 new jobs, but where are those workers coming from? And so we get into if some of those new 100 jobs will represent new households to the community that might bring with them some additional revenues with some additional costs. And so we want to be careful about those things. I won't go into as much detail in that right now. But let's say that we also not only got new jobs data, but they also told us that workers are going to be making more money. So let's say that it's going to be $45,000. I want to put that in here. You can see that I've got inputs for over a period of time. If I stretch this out, I can see all 10 years of our analysis. So this is a 10-year analysis, so I have 10 years worth of average annual salaries. I put in year one $45,000. I could adjust this to say actually it's only going to increase it now 2% is our assumption. And so you can see that's going to have some effect on the numbers as well. If we hit continue, we'll just kind of jump to the next section. The capital investment, let's say that if maybe that needed to change as well, we could come in here and maybe now this is $2 million of buildings and other real property improvements. And so all of these numbers are updating on the right-hand side in real time. Now the other thing that's going on the right-hand side is the ability to kind of look at not just the city, but now we can see any one of our entities that we wanted to. So here's the impact for the county or the school district or all of the other entities over here. In this case, we had a road district and a water district that we're also including in the model. And so we can see, and for any one of those districts, we can kind of get that snapshot of what the results are. So if I move forward kind of in the scenario, so if we've got scenario info now, we want to look at the public support tab. This is where we're able to specify different types of incentives. So first off, if we wanted to consider a property tax rebate, let's say that your community is able to do property tax rebates. This currently says property tax abatement. What I can do is just change this and make it say property tax rebate. In Texas, Texas communities often have the ability to do a property tax abatement, or if they are a city, maybe they would do a 380 agreement where that's more, the phrasing would be a rebate. And so let's just say we were going to offer a 100% rebate on the taxes to be paid on the firm's building for the first 5 years. And so if that were the case, I could specify 100% down that building column. And on the right-hand side, we're seeing the results here of how much that rebate is going to cost, or how much that is going to be a benefit to the company. So our total property tax liability that the company would be responsible for would be $246,000 to be paid to the city over the next 10 years. But if we rebate those amounts as noted here, that's about $68,000 in a rebate. So the net collected from the perspective of the city is now $177,000. If we take a look at our report, that's all going to be incorporated into our analysis. We can see these first few years kind of drop down. Then in year 6, when the abatement ends, it jumps back up. We've got a representation of our property tax analysis here. And we can even see we've got a footnote on our real property taxes noting that the net benefits exclude the $68,000 in property taxes rebated. So that's how some of this comes together. Now, going back to the public support tab, we can also look at, as I mentioned, a non-tax incentive where it's not necessarily tied to a specific tax revenue, but it is maybe just a paid for infrastructure or a grant or something else. And let's say that we knew, perhaps the company came to us and said, hey, we would like to locate here, but we need $100,000 to offset some of our costs. And so from your perspective, what you can do is, as an economic developer, is come in here and take a look at, if I offer $100,000 in a grant, what does that look like in terms of a rate of return and a payback period? And so in this case, again, we think of the $100,000 as an investment in the project. The return on investment will really be these net benefits that the city will receive over the next 10 years. So this is a little over $250,000. We can see this orange line stretching up in year 10 to a little over $250,000. The incentive is indicated here in this gray box in the first year of $100,000. This gray line, the dashed line, is helping us visualize the intersection of those two lines. So what that's showing us, at right around 5 years, the city will be paid back for the value of that incentive. So that's what we're calculating here, a 5-year payback period and a 25% average annual rate of return. Again, our report's going to represent these adjustments that we make on the public support page as well, so we can get that information on our reports as well as in the detailed report. Now, on this incentive, we can actually specify this incentive any way we want. So, for example, the company might have asked for $100,000, but let's say that your guidelines say that you can only do a 3-year payback period in this type of project. So, for example, let's put in a 3-year payback period, and the model will calculate for you what level of incentive would be associated with that 3-year payback period. So we're fixing the payback period to 3. Our non-tax incentive could only be about $66,000 in that case. If we wanted to specify the incentive per job, we could do that as well. We could put in $1,000 per job, for example. That's $100,000. That's the 5-year payback period that we saw earlier. And you can see in this case now, instead of the incentive being paid out all up front, it would be paid out over time, and according to that hiring schedule. So again, all of this information gets aggregated into the reports, and you have the ability, we've been looking at this from the perspective of the city, but you have the ability to click over here, like, so for example, the county, and if the county were going to offer a tax abatement, we could model that, and if the county were to offer a different type of incentive, you could model that as well, so a $500 per job incentive from the county, for example. We can see what that looks like. So all of this information can be adjusted throughout here, and the results come through into the report pages. There's a lot of assumptions that go into the models, and that's really what we take care of on our end. When we put a model together for a client, we'll do the research on the tax rates and the other parameters that need to go into this to put all of these calculations together. And you have the ability to kind of review or edit any of these as you look back here on our assumptions. So clicking on the gear icon in the upper right-hand corner can get to your settings. And you have the ability to kind of take a look at all the different assumptions and things that we've built in for the particular tax district. And you have the ability, you can edit these defaults on an individual scenario and make changes as necessary. One of the changes that you might use from time to time would be maybe the scenario length. So far we've been looking at a project that you're looking at a 10-year snapshot. If we wanted to look at the project maybe over 15 years, we can do that. And so in real time, as we go back to the scenario, we can see now the scenario is stretched out over 15 years. Our net benefits have gone up a bunch, so that's because now we're including an extra 5 years. But essentially now we're able to kind of look out, maybe if you're doing a 10-year abatement and you wanted to look beyond to see what happens in years 11 and 12 and so forth, you could do that. And so you have the ability to control how long the analysis will run for and that sort of thing. I'm going to close this scenario. So this is a scenario that we just made a copy, if you remember. So now that scenario is listed here. We can look at that preview and see those numbers, and we can see now this one's actually a 15-year scenario. We had changed some of these other parameters. So if we're kind of jumping back and forth, we want to kind of refresh our memory between the latest job numbers and the original data. We can preview these differences. And one of the differences was that in the scenario we had switched the length, but we've also can see that the capital investment was different in the two. The hiring was different in the two, and the salaries were different between the two. So that's kind of showing you how we've so far been looking at an existing scenario. I can, if I wanted to create a new project, let me go back to our active projects list. I'm going to go to actually, we'll just go to this one that already has a scenario, but let's say that we wanted to, that this one didn't exist, but we wanted to add a scenario. So we just want to enter data in from scratch, so to speak. What does that look like? So if I hit add scenario here, this is going to take us to a blank kind of without any scenario information at all. And so if we look at this, we can see it says scenario 2 as a subtitle just because I already had that one scenario. I can type something here. I don't have to. Same thing with the description. I'm not going to type anything in there. Now I want to indicate where the project is located. So I'm going to choose again my city from these drop downs. And for the time being, I'll just leave this at Dallas, Texas. And I'll hit next. We'll be able to select our industry again. This is maybe a different type of project. We can think about maybe some sort of manufacturer. As I start typing, you can see I can type either with words, as I did before by typing in the word warehousing, or now I can start typing a NAICS code if I happen to know the specific NAICS code. If I kind of accept that one, it'll pull in our multipliers here. And so a type 2 employment multiplier of 1.5, that's telling us that for every direct job, there's 1.5 total jobs being generated in the community. So if you create 100 jobs, there's going to be 151 total jobs. So we can kind of see that really quickly just by putting in 100 jobs. There's our multiplier in action. Now, as I click through this, I can go through all of these inputs that we mentioned. I'm going to put in a $50,000 salary, and let's say that actually it's $50,000 for the first couple of years. It's not going to increase by 2% right away. So as you can see, you can start to overwrite some of those. Capital investment, I'm going to call $5 million here, and put in $5 million of FF&E. And so we can see we're starting to calculate again all of these inputs. In this case, in this example of our model here, these inputs include taxable inventories, taxable purchases, and taxable sales. So as a Texas client, your taxes, your inventories are still going to be subject to tax. Texas is one of the few states that taxes inventories. If you were located in a state that, like most of the other states, that does not tax inventories, you wouldn't see an input for taxable inventories. Same thing goes with taxable sales. For example, if a community didn't benefit or didn't get any portion of sales tax money, you wouldn't be asked about taxable sales. So it's all customized based on the specific community that we're building this for. So we have clients in Indiana, and in Indiana they essentially have local income taxes that generate a lot of their revenues. But number one, the taxable inventories are not relevant, and sales are not taxed at the local level. So in an Indiana model, you'll see things about property, capital investment, and you'll on the results you'll see local income taxes, but you don't see things that don't apply, such as inventory taxes or sales taxes. So that is pretty much everything I wanted to show. If anyone has questions at this point, you could type them into the GoToWebinar chat, and I can try to answer any of those questions now. We do have an upcoming webinar for our users, for Impact Dashboard current users, kind of getting them acclimated, showing them what the new features are. That'll be coming up on February 21st. We're going to have information on our website about that, and it was noted in our the email that we sent out today, kind of our monthly email that went out today. So there is a kind of a little bit more of an official rollout for the new redesign for our existing users. That will be a webinar on February 21st. The redesign is scheduled to be released later this month, and I think it's a really pretty big improvement over some of the styling, and really sets up some of the additional features we plan to add into the model in the next months and years. Trying to think of anything else that I could bring up. There's a lot of information on our website about Impact Dashboard now. We just redesigned the website, so there's a lot of information there that you can get more of these screenshots. If you do have questions about anything we talked about today, or the model, or whatever it may be, you can reach out to me directly, just paul@impactdatasource.com. or my colleague Nicole D'Souza, and hers is just nicole@impactdatasource.com. I don't see any questions, but we are recording this, so you guys will get a copy of this video in your email tomorrow. I appreciate everyone for joining us. Thanks so much.